Geluk, Ivan Rinpoche.
Rashidele, very happy to see you again.
Very happy to see you. It's after a very, very long time. And
Sure.
We really miss visiting India and Rinpoche. So, and we think that it's very lucky to at least have virtual meetings like this to see each other.
Sure, I do feel the same thing. It has been a long time, and we don't have much of kind of a human-to-human interaction.
Yes, exactly. So today we are conducting the very first chapter of Ambrosia presented by Satipatthana TV. Accordingly, we have planned to have a brief discussion which will lead to understanding Tibetan Buddhism. We respectfully welcome Most Venerable Geshe Jangchup Choeden Rinpoche and Executive Director of Geluk International, former Chief Abbot of Garden Monastery in Karnataka, and Deputy Secretary General of International Buddhist Confederation in Delhi, India. So Rinpoche, this is basically about Tibetan Buddhism because, you know, a country like Sri Lanka, especially what we experience, it will be kind of a very new topic for them to understand what is Tibetan Buddhism, at least in brief. So we can see now when it comes to the literature or doctrine, we can see three major sects in Buddhism. Theravada, which is also called as Southern Buddhism, mainly dominant, I think, in Sri Lanka and Southeast Asian countries. And secondly, Mahayana of East Asian Buddhism, which is prominent in East Asia. Then thirdly, Vajrayana, which is also known as, according to my knowledge, Mantrayana or Tantric Buddhism, and some call it esoteric Buddhism. And this is too called as Northern Buddhism or Indo-Tibetan Buddhism or just Tibetan Buddhism, which is dominant in Tibet, Bhutan, and Himalayan regions. But in certain Buddhist doctrine, we see that this is considered to be a part of Mahayana Buddhism. And certain literature says Tibetan Buddhism is not identical with Vajrayana, but Vajrayana is taught in Tibetan Buddhism. So Rinpoche, now it's your turn to, you know, give us a brief instruction. It's type of an instruction. What is Tibetan Buddhism and whether it is a separate sect like Theravada or is it a part of Mahayana?
Okay, first of all, I do have an article here. I would like to read it. It is more kind of well organized. So I would like to read it. I think it will be much more informative. So there are four main schools of Tibetan Buddhism. That is Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyu, and Geluk. All four schools identify themselves as belonging to the Mahayana, or Great Vehicle, tradition, and therefore are proponents of universal enlightenment. Historically, the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism spread to China, Japan, Korea, Tibet, Mongolia, and all other regions of Tibetan cultural sphere that covers like Bhutan and trans-Himalayan areas of India, and the republics of Tuva, Buryat, and Kalmykia in the present-day Russian Federation. So from this point of view, Tibetans have this understanding, like Tibetan Buddhism is a part of Mahayana Buddhism, but there are some unique characteristics of Tibetan Buddhism, which makes it quite outstanding, where there is a kind of a sizable emphasis on practice of Vajrayana, the esoteric Buddhism or kind of secret practices. So Tibetan Buddhism has many kind of substances included inside there. It shares a lot of basic things with the Theravada, like Tibetan Buddhism. We learn Abhidharma, which is quite similar to the Abhidhamma in Theravada Buddhism, and we learn Vinaya, which is quite similar to the Vinaya that is learned in Theravada Buddhism. And then we also learn the kind of sutras in a form of kind of a great kind of a body of literature. So that in this concept, in this kind of approach, Tibetan Buddhism has a kind of a great emphasis on learning the Tipitaka according to the kind of Pali tradition, or in the Sanskrit we use the term Tripitaka. So there is a kind of a certain portion which is equally shared with the kind of Theravada tradition that is kind of practiced in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, and these areas. But then in Tibetan Buddhism, there is a huge emphasis on the learning of perfection of wisdom sutras, which is quite unique kind of literature, body of literature that is found in a kind of Mahayana tradition. And it is also learned. And then beside all these things, there is a huge body of literature that could fall into the category of Vajrayana literature. And Tibetan Buddhism, that is also learned. So from that point of view, Tibetan Buddhism is a kind of a much more expansive and complete version of kind of Buddhist tradition, which covers a wide kind of area of learning. But when we look into the Theravada tradition, I'm quite sure that there are few of them who may learn the kind of Mahayana sutras and those things, but in general, there is not that tradition of learning the kind of perfection of wisdom sutras and Mahayana sutras. And you cannot imagine learning a Theravada Buddhist monk kind of esoteric kind of tantric literature. So then in the kind of Mahayana Buddhist monks community, we may find one or two persons that may learn some of these kind of esoteric tantric literature, but it's very rare to find a kind of an entire community learning that in a kind of a wider scale. So Tibetan Buddhism is quite unique in itself from that angle.
What I understood is like Tibetan Buddhism contains both the characteristic features, what we call Theravada and Mahayana. So it is some sort of a unique sect of Buddhism. Right. So Rinpoche, then according to doctrine, in Theravada, all effort by the practitioner is put into the individual emancipation. It tells the individual follower to overcome sansaric activities through meditation. In Mahayana, instead of attaining enlightenment individually, the practitioner is trying to develop bodhicitta, the ability to attain enlightenment, and also to use this to benefit all other living beings trapped in samsara. So in order to achieve bodhicitta, the practitioner must begin at the very basics of Buddhist teachings and practices, and then slowly make their way up to more advanced practices until finally he or she reaches nirvana. So is this difference correct? And therefore, what is up to Tibetan Buddhism?
You see, in Tibetan Buddhism, like as I told you earlier, like there are these different sects of Tibetan Buddhism, or we can also say different schools of Tibetan Buddhism, like Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyu, and Geluk. They all equally share kind of these substances, like practicing the kind of Sharanagaman, like taking refuge into Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. That's very common. And then the practice of generating the mind of renunciation, a genuine kind of wish to be free from the samsaric existence, the kind of problems and kind of stress of the samsara. And then further above that, there is a kind of a great emphasis on compassion and kindness and care and love to others, and a genuine wish to kind of seek liberation for oneself, combined with that kind of great compassion, a wish to seriously and genuinely take care of others, and to kind of remove the troubles and problems and the kind of suffering of others. When these are two combined together, then there comes into the picture the kind of practice and instructions and messages of the bodhicitta. So bodhisattvas who generate this noble wish to attain the Buddhahood for the benefit of other beings, in order to liberate other beings from the samsaric suffering. So they dedicate themselves for that kind of attainment. So that comes as a part of the bodhisattva's kind of a very basic kind of aspiration. And then it can be further enhanced. And then kind of there is a huge and vast kind of instructions on how to kind of train oneself into the bodhisattva path, and then kind of consequently come to attainment of the Buddhahood for oneself and to kind of benefit others. So from that point of view, all these four of other Buddhist kind of schools of Tibetan Buddhism, they share this message equally, and they share the emphasis on generating the bodhicitta equally. And from that point of view, it falls under the category of the Mahayana or the Bodhisattvayana tradition, whatever we say. And then further beyond that, there is a very common understanding that as a general bodhisattva, they just seek to attain the Buddhahood in order to liberate or help other beings. But then a kind of a unique and very powerful kind of aspiration of the tantric practitioner bodhisattva is to attain that the Buddhahood in a much shorter period and in a much kind of quicker kind of a time, in order to not being able to kind of bear the pain of other beings. The longer it takes to attain the Buddhahood, the longer the mother sentient being will be suffering. So it's better to attain the Buddhahood as fast and as quick as possible in order to liberate the mother sentient being from that kind of, the gorge of the suffering and pain and discomfort. So from that point of view, the actual bodhisattva kind of practitioner bodhisattva training themselves into the Vajrayana kind of path should have that kind of aspiration and that kind of unbearable feeling within themselves, and that makes it much more powerful and much more kind of urgent to attain the Buddhahood. So that is how the kind of in Tibet there is a huge emphasis on training into the Vajrayana path to quicken and to kind of shorten the period of attainment of the Buddhahood. So from when we look into the things from that angle, there is a kind of clear differences in between a kind of a common Buddhist practitioner and the kind of bodhisattvas and then the practitioner of Vajrayana bodhisattvas. So when we differentiate and have a clear understanding of these things, then we will come to know the speciality of the Tibetan Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhist practices. But it is also understandable that there could be a certain group of people who may not have that kind of yearning to have that kind of aspiration. And for them, whatever is more suitable for them, that is good for them. So it is, we have to understand that these, how to say, variations in the practices is good. Differences in terms of choices also good. So there are different varieties of choices available in terms of practice based on the mental disposition and aspiration of the person who is willing to train into that path.
Yes, so one thing I understood from your explanation, does it mean that Theravada shows some sort of a long way for Nibbana, and Tibetan Buddhism, which is part of Mahayana, it shows a quicker way for Nibbana?
You see, yes, to a certain extent, there are that kind of explanation given from time to time. But the thing is, it requires a lot of conditions met. It is not that simple like black and white. There are a lot of gray areas. So these gray areas require a lot of conditions. If a person is unqualified even to practice the Theravada practices, then it is unimaginable for that person to jump into the Vajrayana and get to the attainment of the Buddhahood. So a person had different capacities. So based on the different capacities of the person, those practitioners should train in a training that is more suitable for them. So we have to look at the things from that angle.
And Rinpoche, I don't know whether this is going to be, some silly question, but when Buddha was there, when we listen to all these Jataka stories and the literature in Buddhism, with Buddha's one preaching, with Buddha's one sermon, people could attain Arahant or Nibbana. It was very short. But why now? Why now? Because we listen to Dhamma, we practice, but still we don't see that.
Okay, one thing is when those people who listen to the Buddha, of course, there is a great advantage of the message coming directly from the Buddha himself. So there is a advantage of the ambience around there, and then advantage of the person from whom they are listening that message directly. And then upon that, those person who came in contact with the Buddha didn't came in contact with the Buddha without any good reason. They probably have previously, in their previous births, have dedicated their merit and prayed continuously for many lifetimes to come into the contact of the Buddha, and then listen directly to his messages and then benefit from him. So it is all connected to aspirations and the prayers and dedications they have done in past. So we are one of those unfortunate person. We didn't get into that circumstances because we didn't have done enough homework before that. So now we are stuck here. So we do hope we need to do and more such prayers. Whenever the future Buddha comes in, we come into directly contact with him and then have the messages and the teachings directly received from them, and then improve and then kind of step by step in the path and then attain the liberation. So from that point of view, another thing is there is a huge difference between the Buddha Shakyamuni himself and then the other arhats. There were kinds of thousands of arhats. Those were living during the Buddha's time. But no one can compare to the Buddha in terms of how they can kind of cause liberation in other people's kind of mind, other people's life. Of course, there were kind of great arhats like Moggallana, great arhats like Shariputra, but none of them are comparable in any way to the Buddha Shakyamuni. So that shows the difference between a kind of a most. So that's very clearly kind of depicted in the kind of these Jatakas and depicted in the other kind of those narrations. So from that point of view, we can also kind of clearly differentiate being a Buddha is completely different from being an Arhat. So there is a huge advantage of being a Buddha in terms of having that power and capability to kind of liberate innumerable beings compared to other Arhats.
Yes. And at the same time, Rinpoche, now as what we discussed, Theravada says that the maximum level of level you can reach is Arahant. But in Tibetan Buddhism and Mahayana, they believe that anyone can have bodhicitta and go for enlightenment. Sure. But yeah, so why that difference? Because I'm asking these questions. These are the general questions with ordinary people. So why that the differentiation?
You see, it is all dependent on what's your goal. And from a very, very kind of simple, I think, how to say, this example, I would like to use this. Like, if you are kind of planning to travel from Sri Lanka and you're just aiming to go to kind of India and return back, then you will just get up to India. You don't get beyond that. Now, if you are aiming to go to United States, then it may be kind of much more preparation and much more kind of how to say, resources that you may need to invest. But you will get to United States as you get the successful. So there is a difference in terms of the goals. The goal that you set to achieve. So in terms of, now there is nothing wrong in achieving the kind of Arhatut, because once someone becomes Arhat, they are liberated from the kind of samsaric existence. But a kind of a benefit that can an Arhat can bring to another people surrounding them is much more limited compared to a kind of benefit a bodhisattva or a Buddha can bring to other people. So there is a huge difference in between that. So for that reason, what we say according to the Tibetan Buddhism is when someone seeks to attain the Buddhahood, they have two purposes in their mind. One purpose is to kind of self-liberation, to kind of liberate oneself from all these troubles that is kind of constantly bothering us. And then another purpose is to liberate all other beings from these troubles of them, that they are suffering. They are kind of troubled by all these different types of sufferings. So there are two purposes. And to attain both of these two purposes to the highest level, the best thing is to attain the Buddhahood. Because when someone becomes a Buddha, then they have limitless power to kind of give the benefit to other beings, those are surrounding them. And then they have a kind of limitless power to kind of liberate themselves. So that is a kind of a great goal. Now, if someone has just a goal to kind of liberate oneself and they don't care much about the kind of people surrounding them, then it could be much easier to attain that. But then the benefit will also be a limited one. So we have to look from that angle. So if we understand the things from that angle, if someone is working for their own benefit, there is nothing wrong in that. That is good, but
isn't it
it is not the
selfishness?
highest benefit.
Isn't it selfishness?
There is a certain degree of selfishness could be there.
You can argue like that, isn't it?
Yeah, there could be a certain degree of selfishness could be there, but it is all dependent on. They may not be kind of much concerned about all the people surrounding them, but they are more focused on kind of themselves to be kind of free from the problem.
Yeah. Okay. And Rinpoche, the book of Kadam, I think it's correct, my pronunciation. Kadampa, the main text, Kadampa school, which belongs to Tibetan Buddhism. It laid the foundation for Tibetans to believe that Dalai Lama as incarnations of Avalokiteshvara. So can you explain a little bit about the concept of Dalai Lama in brief?
You see, in general, the theory or the philosophy of the rebirth is very clearly depicted into the sutras and even into the Jatakas. We read a lot of Jatakas about the life of the previous life of the Buddhas. They are kind of roughly around many hundreds of Jataka tales about in which era, what kind of birth Buddha has taken in past, and what kind of good deed he has done, and then who were the colleagues and who were those that benefit, and those kind of things. So Jatakas and many other philosophical kind of these literature, particularly the Abhidharma and then other literature, suttas, they teach us very clearly that a kind of death is not the end of the being. There is a continuity after the death. So there comes the whole kind of set of theory or a whole set of these instructions or the philosophy of rebirth. So when the rebirths kind of happen, then what are the conditions those are required to produce the different varieties of rebirths? Because we see very clearly that we have all these different types of animals surrounding us, but being a human being has a great advantage. So it is quite sure that the causes of being a human being and causes of being a kind of an animal being should not be a kind of same thing. If it is same thing, then there should not be any kind of big differences in terms of the kind of outcome, the consequence. So from that angle, we can kind of trace, or we can infer that definitely there should be differences in causes and conditions which kind of resulted into that kind of birth. So there comes into the picture the theory of entire kind of this karma and result, the law of karma, law of action and its result. So then we say, in the Sanskrit, we say karma phal, or in the kind of Pali, we may say kamma phala or something like that. So we see that if someone has kind of done good karma or good karma, then it can bring a good resultant rebirth. And someone has done kind of bad karma, it will bring a kind of bad resultant rebirth. So it's basically within that kind of time, within that frame, then comes into the picture. If there is a kind of bodhisattva practitioner who is fully dedicated to liberate the sentient beings and help the sentient beings, then what should be they doing? They definitely try to take good rebirth in many lifetimes to help more and more sentient beings. So when they take rebirth, they should be having certain degree of control of where to take the birth. If they don't have control at all, then it could be possible that they may end up in falling to the hell or kind of a animal realm. So based on that kind of understanding, so bodhisattvas definitely take birth into the places where there is a possibility to help beings. So all these different bodhisattvas definitely have been taking birth in all the different parts of the world. And I do believe very strongly there are bodhisattvas who may have taken birth into the Sri Lanka many times and many other Buddhist countries. But they may not be recognized to be a bodhisattva, but they have taken the birth and they have done their own duty, whatever is required. But and Tibetans have further enhanced this theory, and then they created a kind of a package where kind of combined to the practice of the Vajrayana, then they gain this capability to kind of choose the place of birth where you can go. So from that point of view, we have to believe that all these great bodhisattvas, like Avalokiteshvara, like Maitreya, like kind of Manjushri, and all these, they definitely, wherever there is a need, they descend down to this world to help those people who are in need and who are kind of suitable to get their benefit. So from that point of view, there is an understanding in Tibetan Buddhism based on the kind of these, we say predictions, and based on the kind of fortune tellers or fortune telling of the great kind of seers of the past, that such and such master is a kind of a reincarnation or emanation of that and that bodhisattva. So there are plenty of those kind of things. Like great Master Tsongkhapa was known to be the bodhisattva, kind of the emanation of the Manjushri, and some other kind of great masters are known to be the emanation of the kind of Vajrapani. So the great Master Gindundruk, the first Dalai Lama, was kind of commonly known to many great adept and practitioner to be the emanation and then the rebirth of the kind of Avalokiteshvara. And then these great Gindundruk, the first Dalai Lama, he has kind of continuously taken rebirth into Tibet. And then Tibetans also believe that many of their great kings were also the kind of rebirth and then emanation of the great bodhisattvas. One of the kings was known to be the kind of emanation or the rebirth of the Vajrapani. Other was known to be the emanation and the rebirth of the kind of this Avalokiteshvara. So that kind of thing is there, and then I think it is a part of mysticism. It is a part of mysticism. It is a little bit difficult to explain it thoroughly using the logic, but somehow we can put it into this package of the kind of a theory of rebirth. And if theory of rebirth is further kind of synthesized into much more kind of detail, then we will come to know that there is such possibility.
Okay, and Rinpoche, now there's another question among these ordinary people who really don't understand the system in Tibetan Buddhist culture. I mean, the difference between Dalai Lama and Panchen Lama. They always listen to these stories about Panchen Lama and Dalai Lama, but most of them, they don't have a clear picture about how it is distinct.
You see, the first Dalai Lama appeared somewhere in the, I think late 14th century, first Dalai Lama. Yes. And then since then, this tradition has been continuing. So since the 14th century, now it's a kind of a 21st century. So it is going on like that. So this Panchen Lama probably has a kind of little bit later, I think roughly around 100 years later, his tradition came in. But there are some masters during that period of 14th century, they are later claimed to be the kind of these previous incarnation of the Panchen Lamas. So Panchen Lamas and the Dalai Lamas, they started from certain point, and they were at that point, they were two different kind of personalities. And then in the course of time, the continuity of that kind of person's name carried forward into the Tibetan history. So at certain lives of the Dalai Lama, some Panchen Lamas has continuously kind of being the, had kind of tutored the Dalai Lamas. So it happened for kind of many lifetimes. So from that point of view, the some of the Dalai Lamas, they kind of learned from the reincarnation of the Panchen Lama, and then Panchen Lamas, they also later on learned from the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. From that point of view, they have this understanding of these two great personalities in the Tibetan Buddhism are kind of interlinked, very closely interlinked as a kind of with the relationship of disciple and teacher. So and then they were kind of not just kind of spiritually and from the religious point of view, they also became kind of quite influential in a political point of view. Dalai Lama was accepted as a kind of kind of an emperor of the Tibetan kind of nation, and then Panchen Lama was having a kind of a state fully kind of independently governed by his kind of that establishment. So from that point of view, they, in the course of time, they become most famous and influential in religious, political, and social kind of sphere of the Tibet. Now, they are kind of in a modern time. I have never seen the Panchen Lama, but have kind of read a lot of things about him and heard a lot of things about him. The previous Panchen Lama passed away in Tibet, and then after that, his reincarnation was a kind of a big kind of tussle between the Tibetans and then China. So nowadays, that kind of question is also arising on the issue of the Dalai Lama. China is trying to kind of establish that they have the kind of authentic right to choose who is going to be the Dalai Lama. But His Holiness, the Dalai Lama himself in Dharamsala, and then the Tibetan government in exile, they completely kind of denounce that kind of claim from the Chinese government. So this is a kind of a tussle between Chinese government and His Holiness Dalai Lama and then Tibetan establishment in Dharamsala, because with the Dalai Lama, there is a kind of a lot of kind of things, lot of kind of strings connected, and particularly a kind of huge political influence is connected with his name. So China is looking forward to kind of get a kind of a higher hand by kind of recognizing someone as Dalai Lama. But it is not going to be that easy. It is going to be a kind of how to say, a tough kind of a point to deal with.
Well, Rinpoche, this is about Kala Chakra. Kala Chakra, as I know, is a polysemic term in Vajrayana, which means wheel of time. And we have heard about Kala Chakra tradition in India. And this tradition contains teachings on cosmology, theology, philosophy, sociology, so many things like yoga, medicine. And we have heard that they believe that Buddha did his Kala Chakra teachings in India. So, what I want you to explain is, Rinpoche, what relationship does Tibetan Buddhism have with this Kala Chakra tradition?
You see, Kala Chakra is a kind of a tantric kind of a body of literature and a kind of a system of meditation and practice. So nowadays, Kala Chakra is very famous all over the Tibet. But if we look into the history of Tibet, there were some point in the history when Kala Chakra was a kind of a questionable practice. There were some kind of practitioner and kind of great scholars and then great these translators. Those were kind of skeptical about Kala Chakra Tantra's kind of authenticity. But later on, Kala Chakra Tantra's authenticity was became universally accepted because some of the greatly influential masters of Tibet, they accepted it to be a kind of authentic and unmistaken and kind of not a fabricated one. So Kala Chakra, it is believed according to the tantric tradition, because tantric practices and tantric teachings, as I told you earlier, has a kind of great influence of the mysticism. So since it has its roots in the mysticism, so it's very difficult to establish it from the kind of the documentation kind of proof of the early time. It's very difficult to establish those things. Since in the mysticism, a mystic can claim that they had a vision of the Buddha directly, and then they received this kind of teachings directly from the Buddha in his vision, and that is authentic. So they can transmit that kind of teachings down to someone else. So that is a kind of mysticism. And when it is mysticism, they say that mysticism begins from the point where you cannot apply the logic. So from it's when we try to find out it's a kind of a source or a kind of a root source, it's very difficult to pinpoint the things. But then somehow, since great masters like Tsongkhapa and other great masters, they kind of did thorough research, and they did kind of did experimental practices and meditation on Kala Chakra instructions, and they found that it brings those results. Those are kind of taught, or those are written in the text. So they accepted it as an authentic teaching and kind of helpful to carry on the practice for the practitioners. So from that point of view, now it has become a kind of universally accepted in Tibet. And lately, during the lifetime of great His Holiness Dalai Lama, he did Kala Chakra roughly around 40 times. So all over all the different parts of the world, and from that point of view, Kala Chakra has been kind of universally known. But in the early time, it was not like that.
But with my experience, Rinpoche, I have seen only Kala Chakra is being practiced in Tibetan Buddhism, very ceremonially, you know, in a huge scale. Isn't it?
Yes, there are some kind of how to say unique significance with those kind of things. In general, if you talk about the kind of other tantric practices. That cannot be done like Kal Chakra as it is done in open for the kind of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people together. But other tantric kind of initiations and other tantric kind of rituals that cannot be done in those ways. Those are as the tantric rituals and tantric initiations are meant for kind of a secret practice and secret transmission. They are not permissible to do it in that way. But Kal Chakra has a unique kind of a characteristic. It is believed that when it was done historically, kind of how to say, like 800 or 900 years ago, or maybe a kind of 1,000 years ago, at certain area, at that point, kind of hundreds of thousands of people get together and then have taken the initiation. So since it has that kind of history in past, so they kind of have a kind of quite a liberal approach towards Kal Chakra initiation and Kal Chakra practices. But most of these people who, like the devotees who join the Kal Chakra practices, most of them, I think, roughly around 10% of them have a good understanding of Kal Chakra, what is Kal Chakra, and what should one be doing after the Kal Chakra teachings and Kal Chakra initiation and those kind of things. Yes. There are most of roughly around 80 to 90% of them, they just come there to take blessings, and then kind of with taking blessings, they believe that it will help them to have a good health and longevity and success in business and kind of those kind of things. So it's more or less like that.
Yeah, well, very interesting, Rinpoche. Even I learned so many things from you today. As usual, I'm fond of talking to you always. Your knowledge impresses everyone, not only me. So thank you very much, Rinpoche, for joining this program. Satipatthana.
My pleasure.
Ambrosia, thank you very much. Much merit to you, Rinpoche. Well, this is for the viewers. Yes, please be with us for the other chapters also. We just started with understanding in Tibetan Buddhism. In future, we hope to bring you so many things, so many new information, which will clarify your ordinary questions. So don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel as well. Thank you very much. Much merit to everyone. Teruvan Saranai.